Who are we, you ask? We are the podcast seeking out a better understanding of all things paranormal. We'll have guests from all backgrounds in the paranormal with us along this journey, with Q&As for listeners to ask paranormal experts their questions, and open call-in nights to let listeners discuss their thoughts and experiences on the paranormal. But the question remains, can the unexplained be explained? Or can the paranormal be nothing more than perception? So, close the curtains and turn out the lights and join us on the journey into the paranormal. This is Paranormal Engaged with your host, Adam Young, coming to you from the beautiful Evergreen State.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Paranormal Engaged. Today, we have Christy from Soul Sisters Paranormal with us to discuss hauntings, their investigation techniques, how they protect themselves, the equipment that they use, and even share some of their own experiences. Christy, welcome.
Thank you, Adam. I appreciate the opportunity to be on the show today.
Well, we're glad to have you. So, Christy, what got you into the paranormal?
Well, it's interesting. Soul Sisters Paranormal actually started as a girls' weekend that my sisters and I planned at Moundsville Penitentiary in Moundsville, West Virginia. So we wanted something, because we all live in different parts of the country, so we wanted something a little bit different to do, where we could meet up and do something unique and fun as sisters. So we have a connection with Glendale and Moundsville, West Virginia. Our grandpa was a prison guard at the penitentiary in Moundsville, and when it was in operation before he became the chief of police of Glendale. So we had a family friend that sits on the board of the penitentiary, and he said, why don't y'all come up one evening and stay the night at the prison and just kind of see what you find. So we decided to do that. Again, kind of met up there, and we were it was a rudimentary investigation. We had a couple of night vision cameras, a couple of digital cameras, a couple of voice recorders. But what we found was so compelling to us, and the experiences were so compelling, that we really, really knew that we could do this and come up with some scientific answers, if you will, for paranormal activity. So we decided to formalize the group after that. We became Soul Sisters Paranormal, and that was in 2014. And since that time, we've gone around the country to some of the most reportedly haunted locations in the country and just have had a ball just investigating paranormal activity.
Cool. So what are some of your investigation techniques that you use?
Well, like I said, we really try to come at it from a research-based standpoint as well as a historical standpoint. So the first thing that we do for our investigations is we'll spend a copious amount of time researching the location. So everything that we can delve up, the little tidbits of history that most people wouldn't know about, or that are more of the on the obscure side, and so we use that to kind of form our investigation of the location. So we'll have that history that guides us in the investigation. So, for example, if we're at a Revolutionary War fort, or the Ma Barker House in Central Florida, we'll research those individuals that were germane to the situation and try to find out what we can, and then base questions and leave trigger items based on that research that we found. So that's the first thing we do. We really delve into the history. And then either the day before or the day of the nighttime investigation, we'll take a day tour of the location, and we'll scout out different things on that tour. So the first thing that we'll look for is environmental factors that could influence the investigation. So street lights, roadways, intersections, if there's dogs barking in the neighborhood, children in the neighborhood, anything that if we pick up that during the investigation, we can say that that's not paranormal. And then we also scout out places that we can leave our stationary equipment during the investigation, because when we go in, we leave night vision video cameras and voice recorders and trigger items stationary along different places in the location. So, for example, in different rooms or in hallways or in casemates, if we're at a fort. So we'll leave stationary equipment out and running. So we look for those locations during the day tour. And then the nighttime, the time that we go in for the investigation during the night, we'll deploy all that stationary equipment, we'll deploy our trigger items, and then we'll get into EVP sessions, and we have different handheld equipment, such as REM pods or K2 meters or spirit boxes, and then we'll just do the investigation that night. We usually spend between 8 to 10 hours in a location. And then after that, we will go back and review all of the audio and video footage that we captured to see if we captured anything that we can't explain.
So when you go out and do these investigations, because, they could potentially be dangerous, not only just because of the actual location and what's around it itself physically, but even it could be dangerous spiritually. I mean, you risk attachments and actual harm. So what are some of the things that you guys do to help prepare yourselves and to protect yourselves against this?
And that's a great question. So a couple of things. The first thing that we do when we go into an investigation, we do say a prayer of protection, just kind of for the safety of ourselves, for the team, and then also the location, kind of protect us during that night. And then our investigation style is such that, we don't go in looking for negative. We don't go in looking for anything demonic. We don't provoke. And so I think for us, the fact that we go in with the correct intentions, we really don't encounter things that I would consider negative or, like I said, demonic. Now, that's not to say we haven't encountered dark entities, because I believe we have. But for those, we kind of say, okay, we recognize that you don't want to be part of this investigation, and we're going to leave you be. And that's for the spiritual side. For the physical side, we do we do research the locations that we're at, and we do have places that we've gone to that have been, I'll say, in not such great neighborhoods. So we do have concealed carry permits, and we do carry handguns when we go to these locations. So, and that's just to protect us from the physical side, because sometimes we're more scared of the humans than we are of the spirits that haunt the locations. So that's kind of how we protect ourselves when we go in. We are an all-female group, so I think that tends to lend itself to some different dynamics than it would for a co-ed group, but. To answer your question, those are how we protect. That's how we protect ourselves.
Okay. So, what are some of the equipment that you use? You mentioned, like the K2 meter and the REM pods. What are those, and kind of like how they work, and how do you use that in your investigation?
Sure, absolutely. So we have a vast array of equipment that we take. In fact, it's probably too much. I started to become obsessed with equipment. So we do have a lot of equipment, and the tool that I really like to use the most is voice recorders, because I feel that EVPs are the truest form of paranormal activity, because they're just so hard to debunk. And the reason I say that is because a lot of the EVPs that we get are male or child voices. And when we're an all-female group, I can easily rule out the fact that there's no males with us. So those voices are very hard to debunk, as well as children, because obviously we have no children with us. Right. So voice recorders, we have 10 of those. We have night vision video cameras that we deploy, and again, we do that for stationary purposes. And I say that because, we can't be in all locations at one time. So we'll set up these cameras to run by themselves all night to cover a specific area of the investigation. So we have those. And then we all wear body cameras, and I feel that's necessary for triangulation. So if we capture an EVP or noise that I can't explain, we'll go and look at the body camera that everybody was wearing and get a timestamp to see if anybody could have inadvertently caused that noise or that EVP or that unexplainable piece of evidence. And, so I feel that we need to do that. We need to wear those. And then we'll carry handheld equipment that, we feel that can allow spirits to communicate with us. So we have the spirit box, which for general purposes is just an AM/FM radio that's been configured to sweep very quickly through frequencies, with the idea being that you can sometimes capture spirit voices that'll speak through that white noise. So we have the spirit box. We have a REM pod, which is a device that measures electromagnetic energy, and the idea being that a spirit can approach that piece of equipment and set off lights and alarms that will allow us to know that a spirit could be present. Mm-hmm. We have K2 meters, which are simply the same thing, only they just use a series of lights from green all the way up to red, depending on the amount of energy. Mm-hmm. So we use those. We have an ovilus, which it is configured to essentially allow a spirit theoretically to speak, and that box will transform that noise into actual words. So when you're holding the ovilus up, you'll see words that come through like, farmer or iron or something like that. And then we have use of an SLS camera, which is a device that, generally speaking, it's just an iPad connected to a device that when you sweep the room, it maps the room for human forms. So, for example, if I were to pan the room and you were standing there, you would show up as a stick figure on the screen. So the idea being that if you pan a room and there's nobody there, there's no human standing in the room, if you see a stick figure, then theoretically that could be a spirit trying to manifest itself as an apparition. So those are the types of pieces of equipment that we use on an investigation.
That's fascinating. So I'm going to kind of roll back a little bit
Sure.
on kind of the intent that you were talking about going into these investigations. So not only on the intent, do you guys have to really pay attention to just personally, kind of when you go in, to pay attention to your own personal kind of like energy that you're kind of emitting and that whole state of mind? Do you feel that that's important when you guys are going into an investigation, and if that kind of influences on what happens while you're there?
I believe it does. For us, because the team is made up of myself, my twin sister, my younger sister, and then 2 family friends. So for us, this is really an opportunity for us to get together 3 or 4 times a year and really do something that's neat and bonding for us, as well as delving into a history of a location and the reports of paranormal activity. So when we go in, I'm not going to say it's boisterous or anything like that, but we have a connection. The 5 of us have a connection that I feel is very unique, because obviously 3 of us are sisters, and then, the 2 family friends, we've known them for decades. So I think we have that very good connection, and we have that mindset going in that, we are doing this to legitimately tell the story of any apparition or spirit that would want to communicate with us. And if you were to watch any of our episodes and videos, you would see that the common theme throughout all of these investigations is we ask that question, we want to tell your story. And that is the legitimate focus for us. We feel if we can get an entity to tell their story, it will validate validate or confirm the historical research that we did. So, for example, we had the opportunity to investigate at the Ma Barker House in Central Florida. And the Ma Barker House is the location where Ma and Freddie Barker, who were 2 members of the Barker Carpus gang, were killed by the FBI in 1935. There was a shootout, and Ma and Fred were in this house, and the FBI surrounded it, and Ma and Fred were killed inside this house. So when we investigated, we were using the spirit box, and we were getting answers that were relevant to the house. So, for example, I asked who was in the house, and the spirit box says Kate and Fred. And Kate was the given name of Ma Barker. And then I asked what happened in this house, and the spirit box said they murdered us. Now, to me, that is their story. That, the FBI, they did kill them, but to them, they feel that they were murdered. So that when we get evidence like that, that allows me to tell their side of the story, essentially. So when we go into these locations, to answer your question in a very long-winded way, that is really what we're attempting to do, is to tell the story of any apparition or spirit that would want to communicate or convey that story to us.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit. So when you tell their story and when they communicate with
Mm-hmm.
you, do you feel that uh, with the energy? Do you feel the energy change? Do you feel like they're more at peace? That maybe they're perhaps moving on? I mean, do you feel that helps the
You
spirit?
know, um, well, in some instances, I do not so much move on, because I'll say right now, that's not what we do. We don't attempt to go in and tell spirits to go to the light
Mhm.
or to move on to the next dimension. That's not what we do, because I don't feel that's my place. If we go to some of these locations like the Ma Barker House or Brushy Mountain or Trans Allegheny, those aren't. I don't own that property. So for me, the chance to investigate and to communicate with these entities, that's what I'm attempting to do, not so much get them to move on. Now, I do feel that there's some instances where we've made a connection, and that allows us to kind of, like I said before, convey that story.
Mhm.
And, I think it kind of brings awareness to them. So, for example, in addition to the Ma Barker spirit box activity, we were at Hales Bar Dam, which is in Tennessee, and we're investigating down in the tunnels that run under the dam. And one of the reports is that there were some children that were killed in an accident, and those spirits are continuing to haunt the dam. So we were down in the tunnels, and we asked the question, "Why are you still here? Why haven't you moved on?" And a child's voice says, "I can't. I'm stuck." And to me, it was very heart-wrenching. But that is why that child is still there. He's stuck. But again, I don't feel it's my place to get him to move on. If the owners want to do that, if they want to call somebody in, then that's their place to do it. But as far as the energy or the change, it really depends on the location that we're at. If we're in a house or a place like a Civil War hospital or something like that,
Mhm.
I feel the energy is different than a prison or a jail. So you kind of go in with the knowledge of where you're investigating, and that kind of it does guide the investigation and the techniques that we use.
Okay, I'm gonna kind of sidetrack off here just for a brief moment. I had a listener in our live chat ask if you had ever been to Pinehurst, Pennsylvania, and invested the Bell Witch.
No, I have not done that yet. We've actually, I want to go to Pinehurst. There's several locations that I really want to get to. That is one of them. Waverly Hills is another. But no, we have not had the opportunity to do that yet.
Okay, so what is the I guess Bell Witch is in Adams, Tennessee. So
That's in Tennessee, yeah.
yes, that's right. So speaking of hauntings, uh, have you came across any of the residual? What is residual a residual haunting?
To us, I'll say for me personally, I would define a residual haunting as essentially a blip in time. So, for example, if you imagine a record player, for those in your audience who are old enough to know what a record player is, when you put the needle down on a record and it hits a blip, and it's blip, and just keeps doing that, that to me is what I would consider a residual haunting. It's something that is probably going to happen at a certain time, at a certain place. So, for example, back to the Ma Barker house, when we investigated there, we actually investigated the day of the anniversary of the shootout. So what we did is we left stationary equipment. The shootout happened on January 16th. So we left equipment on the January the 15th that night, and we left it to run stationary through the morning of the 16th to encompass the time that the shootout would have happened. And during that time, on our voice recorder, we got an EVP, but it was two different individuals talking. One said "Ma," or one said "Freddie," and the other said "Yeah, Ma." and the first one again said, "Get ready." So to me, that is residual. It's going to happen at different intervals at the same, during the years. An intelligent haunting is something that to us is responsive. It knows we're there, it acknowledges that we're there, and it responds to us in real time. So, for example, we were at the Exchange Hotel in Gordonsville, Virginia, and we had set a voice recorder on one of the beds in one of the rooms in that hotel. And during the night, when nobody was in that area, we captured a child's voice saying, "Hi, this is my bed." And to me, that is an intelligent haunting because it's acknowledging that something is on his bed, i.e. the voice recorder, and it's attempting to communicate with that voice recorder. So I would consider that an intelligent haunting. So that's how I would describe both of those.
Okay. Have you come across any poltergeist, and kind of what is that? I mean, have you run into that before?
Not so much a poltergeist as I would explain it. We have run into negative entities, mostly in prisons. So, and again, we would expect that with the type of environment that a prison is and what it was meant to do. In Brushy Mountain State Penitentiary, there were areas where we felt that you walk into them and there was a dark presence in that area. I wouldn't call it demonic, but I would call it dark. And in those instances, we acknowledge that it's there. We acknowledge that we feel it. And if it wants to communicate with us, great. We do set boundaries. That's, we say you are not allowed to touch us. You're not allowed to come home with us. You're not allowed to harm us in any way, unless we ask it to. So if I go into a room and say, please tug my pant leg or touch my hair, you have permission to do that. That's different. But for those darker entities, we take the approach of, okay, we acknowledge you. If you want to communicate with us, fantastic. If not, that's your prerogative. But I think that's probably the closest I would say to anything demonic or poltergeist-like that we've encountered, and that's been in Brushy Mountain State Penitentiary as well as Moundsville, West Virginia, the West Virginia State Penitentiary.
Okay, so you guys investigated the Prospect Place mansion.
Mm-hmm.
So
yes, in Trinway, Ohio.
Yes. So this place was a mansion. Is one of the most haunted locations in the state. Prospect Place Mansion was built back in 1857 by George W. Adams and was the center place of his 14,500 acre estate. So during the Civil War, it kind of became a station for the Underground Railroad. Can you share some of your experience with that?
Sure, absolutely. This place was very interesting because it's pretty much in the middle of nowhere. When you drive upon it, it is impressive. So as you said before, it was built in the 1800s. It was a stop on the Underground Railroad. And it's fascinating because you go in and it's got these large hallways. It's got these large bedrooms. And then you go up to the top floor and there's a huge open area that used to be a dance hall. And reports were that Abraham Lincoln even visited this house to go to some of these parties that were held there. And at the very top of the house is a cupola where it's all glass. It's a 360-degree view from this cupola. And the reports were that they would have signals, light signals, to allow the slaves to know, the runaway slaves to know whether or not it was safe to approach the house as a stop on the Underground Railroad. They have large cellars that they would house these runaway slaves in order to get them to the next stop on the Underground Railroad. And there were also reports that there was a train accident, and some of the survivors of the train accident were taken to the house and they were cared for, but when they died, they put them down in that cellar because the ground was too cold to bury them. So they left them down there in the cellar until the summer. So there's just a lot of reports of apparitions, of disembodied voices. There's also a barn on the property, and the reports were that when a bounty hunter came to round up some of the slaves that had made it into the house, that he was surrounded and hung in the barn. And so reports of activity is there, disembodied voices as well as apparitions. So when we investigated, we did our day tour, we did our stationary camera setup and such. So we had cameras set up around the house in different rooms, and we had voice recorders set up in different rooms. And some of the things that we found that were very intriguing and compelling to us, we did capture an EVP in the barn, which was very neat. One of the coolest EVPs that we captured, though, was in one of the rooms, and we had just been in the room conducting an EVP session, and we had all left the room and we had gone downstairs, and then two of us had gone down into the cellar. So there was nobody in the upstairs rooms at all. But one of the questions that we always ask in these EVP sessions is, again, do you want to tell your story? Will you talk to us? And the EVP that we captured, again, when nobody was there, was they here to talk to us. And if you listen, to me, it sounds like it has an African-American slant to it. And it sounds like maybe one of the slaves wanted to communicate with us at that time, which is very cool, because it was a whole it wasn't just a word, it was a whole phrase. Again, it said, they here to talk to us. And then after that, we had a stationary voice recorder, or a stationary night vision camera in the hallway, and there was a light anomaly that I can't explain. It moves down the hall, along the wall, and disappears. And we tried every way that we could to debunk this. So it couldn't have come from a car, because there was no road that ran that angle. And the door that, if it was a car, the bedroom door that it would have come from was shut. So I have no explanation as to where this light anomaly came from, but it was really cool. It walked down the hallway. So Prospect Place was very interesting, and it was a great experience for us to investigate there.
Okay, so I got an EVP here I'll play, and I'll let you tell us a little bit more about it.
Okay.
Did you like the music that we had going? Did you like the music that we had going? Did you like the music that we had going?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes. So that was up in that hall, up in the ballroom that I spoke about, and that it was just, there was such a interesting feeling that night. We all sat up there, and again, as I said before, one of the things that we like to do is we like to leave trigger items, and we also, and one of those trigger items is playing music. And so we had just played music up there, and that was one of the EVPs that we captured. And to us, again, it's a very compelling piece of audio to us, because it's acknowledging, it's one of those, that is acknowledging that it sees us and it heard the music. So, while we were up there, it was just, again, a very neat feeling to be there, where the history states that people, like I said, Abraham Lincoln was there, some dignitaries were there during the time of the Civil War. And so, while we were sitting there, it was a very interesting night to be up there. It was very cold. But it was a very interesting night to be up there.
Okay. So you guys had left a recorder out in the barn, and so I'll play that EVP here, and then you can tell us a little bit more about it. So it sounds like he's saying, "Here he is."
Hmm. Yes, and to us, like I said, the stories there were that the bounty hunter was hung. When you walk into the barn, there's stables on two sides, and then there's this essentially a trap door, if you will.
Uh-huh.
So when you look up, you see this hole in the rafters there. So the reports were that they took the bounty hunter in and they hung him. And so, yes, that was one of the EVPs that we captured. And it was also interesting because, and to us, that indicates that that here he is, to us indicates that I feel it was residual, and that they're saying here it is, i.e. here's the bounty hunter. And we also caught, and I didn't put this in the video because when we do our videos, before we release our videos, we actually go around the group and we get a consensus as to what it is. And if we don't get that, very rarely do we release it on the videos. But we also had some interesting, what I would call scratching noises. Several of us, thought that it could have been an animal, but when I spoke to the owners of the location, they said that wasn't possible. So it was very interesting. That barn was very interesting. And when you walk into that barn, the energy, as you spoke about, definitely shifts. I would say that moves toward the darker side. And it's as soon as you cross the threshold into the barn, the energy does shift a little bit towards something that I would say is, again, not demonic, but just dark. So that was a very good EVP that we captured there for sure.
So do you guys think that negative energy was stemming from that bounty hunter?
I do, because for us, my feeling is that the imprint that you're going to have, that an entity is going to have, is going to be based on his life. So, for example, if you're a not so nice person in life, you're probably going to carry that same personality, if you will, into death. And so for me, I think that the bounty hunter had that ill intent in his heart, and he was, for all intents and purposes, not a good person. And so I think that dark energy carried itself into the afterlife with him. So that is why I think that energy shifts. And that's why I think we feel that same type of energy in jails and prisons. Obviously we're most of the people that are in prisons are there for a reason, and it's not a great reason. So that's where you have the murderers, the rapists, the drug kingpins and all of that. Mm-hmm. So that negativity in life, I think, is what you're going to imprint. If you remain a spirit, that's what is going to imprint in the afterlife. So I think that's why you get a lot of the darker energies in prisons and jails as well. So the same thing with there at Prospect Place. That's my feeling.
Okay. So when you captured the CVP, were you guys in the barn asking questions at the time, or were you guys in a different area investigating?
No, we were all in the house at that time. That was captured on a stationary camera. And to us, some of that is that to me, most of the times is the most compelling. When you have those, there's nobody else around, you can verify that there's nobody else around. Those disembodied voices that just essentially come out of the air, to me, are the most compelling. We did capture them at Prospect Place, but the ones that we captured at the Exchange Hotel, Brushy Mountain, most of the places that we've gone to, we've been very fortunate to capture those EVPs on our stationary equipment. And I think a lot of the times that has to do with the fact that we actually listen to every minute of audio that we record, and we watch every piece of video footage that we record during an investigation. And for me, I often say that, a lot of investigators hear, but not a lot of investigators listen. And I think that's what I really kind of pride Soul Sisters Paranormal on, is that we do listen, not just to the footage that we capture, but also in the moment. Mm-hmm. So like I said, we've been very fortunate to capture it on our stationary, but also in the moment when we're out doing these investigations, because I feel that we've really kind of trained ourselves, if you will, to listen to what is being said.
Okay. So we got one more EVP here. Sounds like this is when you guys were all downstairs, or in the basement of the house. One of your voice recorders that was left upstairs picked up a voice. So I'm going to go ahead and play that
Yep.
one there.
Okay. Just to play it the once.
So it sounds like he's saying, what is he trying to say here?
To us, when we listened to it, and all five of us agreed that it's saying they here to talk to us. And to us, that is intelligent because, as I said before, we were just in that room about 10 minutes prior, and we had asked the question, do you want to talk to us? Do you want to tell us our story? Can you communicate with us? And so when we left the room, again, there was five of us there. Three of us went to the lower level, and then two of us actually went down into the cellar. So I can absolutely verify that none of us were in that area at the time of that capture. That was captured on a stationary voice recorder, and to us, it says they here to talk to us. And I feel personally that it's one of the slaves or one of the free slaves that were there that had made it from the underground to the Underground Railroad, and they're saying they're here to talk to us. They want to talk to us. And that was probably the most compelling piece of evidence that we captured from Prospect Place that night.
Okay. So you're currently on an investigation. So where are you and what are you investigating?
Okay. We're actually in Balsam, North Carolina, and we've been very fortunate since we've been doing this since 2014. We've had the opportunity to meet some very cool groups in the paranormal community, and one of the investigators that we've become very close with and collaborate with is Miranda Young from Ghost Biker Explorations. So she's up here along with my twin sister and I, so there's three of us, and we are at the Grand Old Lady Hotel in Balsam, North Carolina, and it's a two-part investigation. So Miranda investigated last night, and Soul Sisters will be investigating tonight. But some of the claims that surrounds this hotel is disembodied voices, apparitions, footsteps, door slams, even a ghost dog in some areas. So I can tell you that Miranda had an amazing night last night and captured some very compelling evidence. And I'm hoping that Soul Sisters will have that same opportunity to capture some compelling evidence tonight. So, what we're going to do is we're going to go in and, as I spoke about before, we're going to set up all of our stationary equipment and our trigger items and just see if we can make contact with anybody that wants their story told.
Okay. So out of all the places that you have investigated, which one would you say was the most haunted?
For me, the most haunted that we've investigated is the old Gilchrist County Jail in Trenton, Florida. And Trenton is I'd say about 45 minutes west of Gainesville, Florida. And it's a jail. It's a small jail. It's in operation from 1928 to 1968, and it's just a two-story jail that has 8 cells. It's very small, and when you go up on it, when you come upon it, it's covered in ivy. It's got vines all over it. It's got the Spanish moss hanging in the trees around it. And if you didn't know what you were looking at, you probably would walk right by it. It looks just like an abandoned building. And so, again, I've investigated there twice, once, again, with Miranda from Ghost Biker Explorations, and once with my entire Soul Sisters team. But the first night that Miranda and I investigated, again, she and I were the only two people on the property, and we were told by the owner that when we go there that it's not in a great area, and she highly encouraged us to take our weapons with us, our handguns. So that kind of gives you an idea of the area that it's in. And so when we went in, I would call this investigation probably the truest and most compelling investigation that I've ever been a part of, because every piece of equipment that we had deployed that night was validating every other piece of equipment. And by that, I mean the SLS was picking up the shadow figures that we were seeing with our own eyes. Our laser grids had shadow figures crossing and breaking the planes of the laser grids when we weren't in the building. We had EVPs that were saying names we were capturing on the obelisk. And we had our REM pod that was going off when we were asking about names that we had picked up on the spirit box. And it was just the most compelling investigation that I've ever been on. And then when we went back with my entire group about 2 weeks later, we were capturing some amazing evidence as well. And to me, that really validates the activity that we were capturing. So, a lot of people in the community, they have their favorite investigation techniques. They have their favorite pieces of equipment. And there are those that, disparage the spirit box or the REM pod or the flashlights or the SLS camera. But for me, if you've got all of those pieces of equipment essentially validating every other piece of equipment, it makes our story so much more compelling. That we have the possibility that we are capturing things that I can't explain. So, I can tell you that I see shadow figures, but when I have evidence of the laser beams being cut by a shadow figure that, is when I know that nobody's in the building, and when I have the SLS camera picking up the shadow figures that I've seen with my eyes, and again, the REM pod and the SLS, that to me was the very, really the epitome of paranormal investigations, if you will, that location.
Mm-hmm. So during your investigations, what would you say was probably your most scariest moment doing it?
Okay, so I'll say that we've never really been scared per se. I'd say we've been startled, but once you get into the investigations, at least for us, it really becomes about the research and the fact finding. So yes, we've had those whoa moments where a door slams, or you hear a disembodied voice in the moment. For me, when we were at the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum, all of us, and including, because most of the time when you go to these locations, they'll have a volunteer that's there that stays on the property just for security reasons. Mm-hmm. But when we were at Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum, all of my investigators were in this hallway, and the 2 volunteers were there as well, because they were kind of giving us some historical information. So we were all standing there, and nobody else was on the property. And from down the hallway comes this loud scream, the loudest scream that I have ever heard on an investigation, and every piece of equipment that we had on us picked it up. So that really sends the chills down your spine when you're in a former insane asylum and you hear a scream from down the hallway, and there's no verifiable mechanism that created that scream. So for me, I can't explain where it came from. So that, I would say, that was one of the most startling. Moundsville, the West Virginia State Penitentiary in Moundsville, we were sitting in the infirmary area, which is a second-story area, and it's only accessed by these 2 large stairwells, like heavy concrete and iron stairwells on both ends of the infirmary. Mm-hmm. So we were sitting in the infirmary area, and we were saying things like, it's time to take your medicine. Come on up here if you have medicines that you need to take. And footsteps were just running up and down those stairs, both of them. So it sounded like at any second, something is going to come around the corner and come at you from, down while you're sitting in the middle of the infirmary. So I say that was very compelling to us. Brushy Mountain State Penitentiary, we had some great EVPs that we heard in the moment. And footsteps that we heard in the moment. So, that's a great place. It's really, like I said before, we've been very fortunate to really capture some compelling, unexplainable evidence from most of the locations that we visited. So, when I go back and I think through all of the locations that we've been through, I can tell you some startling, EVPs or noises from each one. And they're just different. When we were at, Fort Mifflin in Pennsylvania. I wouldn't consider it scary because you've got so much history that's surrounding you, and it's just fascinating to be in these casemates. But when you see a shadow figure crossing through your laser grid again, that's pretty startling. But to me, it's more fascinating than startling.
Absolutely. So, so Melvin Manor, you guys did. In fact, the owner, Josh, I'm going to be fixing to here shortly, try to get him on the show as well. But
Josh is great.
Right. So I'm going to be fixing to contact him here, probably here in the next few weeks to get him up here on the show to kind of talk about it. So I think this is going to, being that you've been there and investigated it, can you share your experience that you had there at the Malvern Manor, and what did you find there?
Well, Malvern Manor was a very cool find for us. We were actually in the area investigating the Villisca Axe murder house. And so we had investigated the Axe murder house on Saturday night. And so it was all 5 of my team members and I there. And so we did Villisca, and then 2 of my teammates had to fly out on that Sunday morning. So the 3 of us that remained, we wanted to see if we can find something else to investigate. I mean, we had trucked all of our equipment from Florida to Iowa, so we wanted to see if we could find something else. So we researched Malvern Manor beforehand, and we were just going to go and take some day shots around the manor. But when we got there, Josh was there, and he was so welcoming and so polite and professional and cordial. He allowed us to go in, and I said, we'd just come from Villisca, and we have our equipment. Do you think we could do a mini investigation here? And this was during the day, so it was not a nighttime investigation. So he said, sure, absolutely, come on in. And so we were able to deploy a lot of our stationary equipment, and we had K2s and our REM pods with us. And that investigation really blew my mind. We captured numerous EVPs. We went up into the attic area and captured what I would say, again, would be a darker energy. I wouldn't go negative, but it definitely let us know that he kind of wanted us out of his space. And we all heard that EVP in the moment, which was very cool. And there was also reports in one room of a young girl that was killed in the area, not in the manor, but killed in the area. And so when we set up stationary equipment there, when we went back and reviewed it, we captured her name on that EVP. And it was fascinating because we had several instances of EVPs. We had a very cool K2 session in one of the rooms where there was no electrical outlets around. And we did a sweep, and we didn't find anything. But when we went back to the area, we were getting positive responses on our K2s, and to the point where it was actually going all the way up to red, which, if you're not familiar with the K2, that's the highest level of the energy that it reads. And so we were getting responses going all the way up into the red, which again was fascinating to us. So Malvern Manor is it's just an amazing location, and I encourage anybody who's out in that area to go investigate and to meet up with Josh, because he's just a very welcoming and a very cool guy. We really enjoyed meeting him.
That's awesome. So Josh actually provided you guys with a picture, and then you guys got an EVP regarding that picture. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so he gave us the picture of the young girl. He provided us with several pieces of information. Actually, he allowed us to go through all of his archives and basically his news clippings and all of that. And we got the EVP from the young girl that is said to be inhabiting that area. And then also there was a session. We did a session in, I guess it would be called the main room or the lobby. We walked in there, and we put a picture down on the floor. And I'm sorry, the name of the gentleman escapes me right now, but we put that picture down on the floor, and we stepped away, and we had two K2 meters beside the picture, and we were asking it to go to the K2 and light it up based on the questions that we were asking him. And it was a very cool back and forth on this K2 meter, and I believe the EVP that we captured either said no way or something like that. when we captured that EVP on the voice recorder that I was holding. But that again is very compelling evidence to us, because I can't explain that. The K2 was sitting there stationary for several minutes before we came back with that picture. And so we didn't change the environment of the K2 other than starting to ask questions and putting that picture there, or acknowledging that picture. So again, that to us is very compelling when you have a piece of equipment that is sitting there not doing anything until you start to really ask it questions, and then it starts to light up. We had the same thing at the Exchange Hotel, in Gordonsville, Virginia. We had 2 K2 meters, and we were attempting to contact the spirit of a young boy named Jeremiah. And we left the K2 sitting there, and they're not doing anything. There's no power around the K2. We leave it sitting there for a few minutes, and then we say, do you want to play with this glow in the dark ball that we had with us? And I said, if you want to play with the ball, light up the K2, and the K2 starts lighting up. So
Wow.
the only, again, no environmental factors had changed other than the fact that I'd started asking direct questions to Jeremiah. And so that was, to digress a little bit, that was a very cool experiment, because my investigator Kim and I were at opposite ends of a hallway, and we both had K2s in front of us. So I would roll this glow ball down to her, and she would say, if you want me to roll it back to Christy, light up my K2, and her K2 would light up. So she'd roll the ball back down to me, and I'd say, if you want me to roll it back down to Kim, light up my K2. So it was a very interesting experiment that we did. So to go back to Malvern Manor, we did something a little similar, except with a picture. And to have that validation based on the K2 was, to us, very fascinating.
That is fascinating. Wow. Yeah, that's just fascinating. I'm kind of blown away by that. The story about the ball.
Yeah,
I mean, that's just nuts.
Yeah, if you haven't had a chance to watch the Exchange Hotel video that we've put out, that to me is probably, that's the best examples of EVPs that we've ever captured. We captured, like I said, the child that said, "Hi, this is my bed." And then we also captured an old gentleman, because you can tell by the voice, an old gentleman saying, "I don't know, I'll be back at 4:30. And again, there's no males with us, and we weren't even in the area at the time of that EVP capture. So we were able to capture that. And another interesting thing about that is, I mentioned that when we do these day tours at each of these locations, what we also do is we also have a voice recorder on us during that day tour. So when we were walking around during the Exchange Hotel day tour, we went into a room where even the docent who runs it said that she doesn't go into that room because of the energy that she feels. So when we were doing the day tour, it was just myself and Kim and Jenny. And so we stopped at the threshold of that room, and Kim says, "Now, why doesn't she go in here?" Meaning Angel, the docent. Why doesn't she go in here? And I say, she doesn't like it because she doesn't like the energy. And right then you hear a male voice going, he. Kind of like this, I guess you would call it sinister laugh right behind us. And so, when people ask, why do you only catch things at night? The answer is we don't. We capture things during the day as well. So, capturing things like that in the moment is exciting to us.
That is awesome. Christy, where can people find more out about you?
Okay. The name of the group again is Soul Sisters Paranormal, and our website is www.soulsistersparanormal.com. And we're also very active on Facebook under Soul Sisters Paranormal, and we're also on YouTube, and our channel is Soul Sisters Paranormal. And on the YouTube channel, we have all of our investigation videos. Well, they're also on the website, but if you go to the YouTube channel, we have all of our investigation videos there, as well as what I like to call quick clips. So we'll clip certain pieces of evidence, and they're just 1 to 2 minute little clips of some of the evidence that we found that may or may not be included in the main video. So we have the quick clips there. There's more information about our team there. But if anybody would like to follow us or subscribe, we'd really appreciate that.
Absolutely. So do you have any, besides the ones you're on now, do you have any other upcoming investigations that you're going to be doing?
We do. We do have a couple other investigations. We're going to be going to Octagon Hall in Kentucky. Unfortunately, we had a couple that were canceled due to the pandemic, so we're trying to get those rescheduled. We also are doing some Paracons this year. Okay. 2, unfortunately, have already been canceled, but our next one will be in October, and that will be in Las Cruces, New Mexico, at their Paracon. I believe the dates, I don't have them right offhand, but I believe it's the 3rd through the 5th. Please verify that on our website, because I don't have the calendar right in front of me, but we'll be in Las Cruces. And then we have some other really cool collaborations coming up with some different teams. Again, one of our favorite is Miranda from Ghost Biker, so we're doing one more with her, and some other teams as well. So it's a very exciting year. Once we get all this quarantine mess situated, when we get back on track, it's going to be a very exciting year for us.
Right on. So, Christy, stay on the line, and we got some stuff that we'll go over. I want to thank everybody for listening to us today, and thank you, Christy, for coming and sharing your experiences with us. And on the
Thank you, Adam.
You're welcome. So I want to remind everybody, JC Gordon will be with us on the 23rd, next Saturday, to share his experience with us on his near-death experience as he talks about the red pill, blue pill delusion. Definitely going to be an interesting topic that you don't want to miss. Thank you, guys. As always, stay safe, stay healthy, and we will see you next time.
If you enjoyed our show tonight, head on over to Paranormal Engaged on Facebook and stay up to date on the latest news. And don't forget to click that like button. To find more about upcoming shows and guest information, stop by www.paranormalengaged.com. Paranormal Engaged can be found on iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcast, and can be played on Alexa with a Podbean skill.